Even if the BWI Magnaride shock absorbers are very similar each other, could require different kits and remanufacturing procedures, so it is suggested to double-check the details of each kit into the proto catalog. The BWI Magnaride shock absorber equip the most expensive cars, and they are very expensive too. For this reason, we suggest do not scrape the market doing very low prices in order to conserve the margin. The MR fluid could be toxic, so it is strongly suggested to work always with gloves, mask and open windows, to depressurize the shock absorber in order to prevent the oil get sprayed when opening. For this reason, you have to start making a small hole at the base of the shock absorber in order to be sure that the gas is removed. Then, once depressurized, the shock absorber can be opened using the mangusta that is warmly suggested in order to not spray out the oil and keep it in, or the lathe machine, but it is unsuggested, because if the MR fluid drops into the refrigerating circuit, can damage the lathe machine. Starting from this point, to reman an original shock absorber or a shock absorber already remanufactured is the same thing. So, once the shock absorber has been opened, remove the rod with the piston and the guide. That can be the original if it has not been previously remanufactured, or an Emetec one if already remanufactured. If still in good conditions, recover the oil. As well as the magnetic powder that remains into the shock absorber. Then, depending on the application and the kit, it could be necessary to weld a thread compass to the body of the shock absorber, or to thread directly the body of the shock absorber in order to create the housing for the pressurizing valve. If, for instance, using the kit 95620, thread close to the eyelet. The components of a magnetorological shock absorber are just few and very simple. The piston has any valve, just holes and a solenoid capable to modify the physical properties of the MR fluid. The kit for a magnetorological shock absorber is used to be composed by a manifold, a guide including the oil seal, a circlip blocking the guide into the manifold, an O-ring for the oil-gas separator, and a pressurizing valve. Fit the manifold on the shock absorber and the bronze centering device as well. Fit also the iron centering device, mount everything on the mangusta, press with the tailstock and weld the manifold. Then lubricate the O-ring of the separator with grease in order to avoid its damaging when passing through the housing of the circlips. Fit the separator into the shock absorber and place it in the right position. For more information regarding the right position of the separator, ask Emetec. Fit the original oil and its powder. It is strongly suggested to use always and only the magnetorheological fluid Emetec 97820 because it is the only one used by the OE, so it is the only one providing exactly the same damping forces. Shake the magnetorheological fluid until all the ferrous dust deposited on the bottom is suspended in the fluid itself. Fit the piston with the rod and the rebound stop into the shock absorber. Bleed all the air out. Don't worry if some oil is coming out. Fit the guide as well. Fit the circlip into its housing. Double check that is into its housing. Block the guide with the thread ring. Clean properly the shock absorber. Screw the valve into its housing. Pressurize using a thin needle at more or less 18 bar. and test the shock absorber on the dyno with and without tension, looking if any emulsioning or cavitation.